You are Bertran, a young peasant in a small French village in the year 1147. The first thing that assaults you is not the cold, but the absolute darkness. It's a silent, freezing night. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and stale straw. Your body aches, a dull, constant throb from endless toil in the fields. You toss and turn on a hard, foul-smelling straw bed. The darkness is total, because no one in your village can afford to waste precious candles or oil for light after sunset. You can hear the rhythmic breathing of your exhausted family, a sound that should bring comfort, but only amplifies the turmoil in your mind. You are not kept awake by physical fatigue. A different kind of hunger gnaws at you, the hunger for a life of purpose and devotion. The threat is not a wild beast, but the slow, crushing weight of a predetermined future. You see it in your father's prematurely aged face. At 40, he looks 60, his back permanently bowed, his fingers deformed by arthritis, his mouth missing most of its teeth. This is your destiny if you stay, a life of endless labor followed by a premature death. The Templars, you've heard, are different. They are the heroic warriors of Christ. Stories told by pilgrims and merchants describe them as powerful warrior monks, dressed in immaculate white mantles adorned with the Red Cross, protecting pilgrims on the dangerous roads to Jerusalem. They are the embodiment of power and devotion to God. This is the life you crave, the escape you believe in. Act 1. The monotony of devotion. You rise before dawn, as always. The cold seeps into your bones, and your stomach cramps with hunger. Breakfast is a meager slice of dark, often moldy, rye bread and a sip of sour milk if you are lucky. The hard bread scrapes your gums as you chew, a painful reminder of your family's poverty. You make your decision. "Father," you say, mustering all your courage, "I have decided to leave and join the Templars." Your father's tired eyes show a flicker of sadness, mixed with a hint of relief. One less mouth to feed is not something to mourn in these hard times. He warns you. The stories told by travelers rarely reveal the whole truth. With those prophetic words echoing in your ears, you leave the next morning with nothing but the clothes on your back and a small bundle of hard bread and dry cheese your mother silently gave you. The journey to find the Templars is your first test. For weeks you walk, sleeping in open fields, exposed to the elements. Your feet, accustomed to labor, develop painful blisters that burst, become infected, and form thick calluses. Your clothes become filthy and infested with parasites that keep you awake with their incessant bites. Still, you persist, driven by faith and the promise of 3 square meals a day and a roof over your head. These are luxuries you couldn't even imagine in your old life. You finally arrive at a Templar preceptory, not the grand fortress you imagined, but a fortified collection of buildings surrounded by cultivated fields. To your exhausted eyes, it looks like paradise itself. The guards at the gate wear simple brown wool tunics, not the famous white mantles. They are sergeants, a lower class of the order. You announce your desire to join, repeating the formal name you have carefully memorized: the Order of the Poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. The guards exchange bored glances. "Another one," one mutters. You are led to the master of novices, a middle-aged man in the coveted white mantle. His face is a mask of indifference, honed by years of evaluating hopeful youths like you. He interrogates you, his voice cold and detached. He asks your name, your age, your knowledge of arms, if you are married or have debts. You answer truthfully, your voice steady despite your pounding heart. You are a peasant, 17 years old with no debts or diseases. He finally looks up, his eyes calculating, assessing your potential. Your height and strength from constant physical labor are in your favor. This is not a life of glory and adventure, he warns you. It is a life of servitude to God, the Order, and your superiors. You will make a vow of perpetual chastity. You will obey every command without question. You swallow hard but nod with conviction. "I am," you say. You are accepted as a novice for a probationary period of 1 year. You will not wear the white mantle. That is a privilege for ordained knights only. You will wear a brown tunic like the other novices. Your dream has come true, but the reality will soon prove to be very different from the fantasy. The dormitory is a low-ceilinged, rectangular room with small windows. Narrow, hard cots line both sides, offering no privacy. The air hangs heavy with the persistent smell of mold, sweat, and urine. Your belongings consist of 2 rough brown tunics, coarse linen trousers, sandals, boots, a thin blanket, and a wooden bowl. It is still better than your peasant. Life, you tell yourself. At least here you will be fed regularly and have a higher purpose. Then the bell rings. It's the call for Compline, the last prayer of the day. A senior novice named Guillaume explains the Templars follow a modified Benedictine rule: 8 prayer offices a day. Matins at midnight, lauds at dawn, prime at 6 a.m., terce at 9 a.m., sext at noon, none at 3 p.m., vespers at sunset, and compline before bed. Your sleep will be interrupted after only a few hours for matins. The prospect is disheartening. What if someone misses a prayer because they are asleep, you ask hesitantly. The look Guillaume gives you is a warning. You don't want to find out. Discipline is strict here. Act 2. The crushing hierarchy. The days that follow are a succession of shocks. The routine is relentless. Your day begins before dawn with prayers, followed immediately by labor in the fields. You are already used to farm work, but the constant interruptions for prayer and military discipline make it more exhausting. In the late afternoon, you receive basic weapons training. This is nothing like the heroic fantasies you nurtured. There are no dazzling sword lessons or war horses. Instead, you spend hours carrying heavy logs to build strength, running laps for stamina, and marching in formation to instill discipline. One particularly hot afternoon, carrying a heavy log on your shoulders, you dare to ask the master of arms when you will learn to fight with a sword. The man, a veteran Templar, knight with a scar running across his face, laughs bitterly. "Do you think you'll become a knight, boy? Look at your hands," he orders. You look at your calloused hands, confused. "Those are peasants' hands," he explains with veiled contempt. "Only men of noble birth can become Templar Knights. At most, you can aspire to become a sergeant if you prove your worth, but you will never wear the white mantle." His words hit you like a physical blow. In your ignorance, you believed any man of faith could become a knight. Now you discover that the social hierarchies of the outside world are reproduced within the Templars. Your plebeian birth condemns you to the lower ranks. "But I thought all Templars were equal before God," you weakly protest. The Master of Arms lets out a sarcastic laugh. "Equal before God, perhaps, but not before the Order. Now get back to your training." That night, lying on your uncomfortable cot, you fight back tears of disillusionment. The world you imagined of, brave knights united by a common purpose regardless of their origins, was just another illusion. Still, you rationalize, being a Templar sergeant is better than being a peasant. At least you would have some purpose and be in God's service, even if you never become a true knight. The training continues, and you gradually get used to the exhausting routine. The constant interruptions for prayer become familiar markers that divide the day into manageable segments. The food, though simple, is regular and more abundant than you ever had before. Your body transforms. Muscles develop from constant physical work, and your stamina increases to the point where you can run for hours or carry weights that were once impossible. What doesn't improve is the crushing monotony. Every day is identical to the last, following an immutable rhythm dictated by bells and seasons. The same prayers, the same tasks, the same faces. Even conversations seem to repeat themselves, as topics are severely limited by the Order's rules. Templars are forbidden to speak during meals, and you learn this the hard way when you whisper a question and are punished with a full day of fasting. You are discouraged from talking at any time unless it is necessary to perform your duties. You soon discover the Templar rule is an extensive document regulating every aspect of a member's life. One of its most suffocating aspects is the absolute prohibition of any physical contact between members. Not even a fraternal embrace is allowed. You witness 2 novices severely punished with public flagellation for embracing after one received news of his mother's death. The master of novices declares, "The flesh is weak, and any physical contact can lead to the temptation of lust." You stand in silence, watching the young men scream as they are whipped. No one dares show empathy, as it could be interpreted as questioning authority. The lack of human contact is particularly difficult for you, raised in a peasant community where physical affection was a natural part of daily life. Here you live surrounded by people, yet in a loneliness that is almost tangible. Act 3rd, The Vows of a Sergeant. As the months pass, you watch with growing apprehension as those who cannot adapt to the rigid Templar discipline fail. A novice who repeatedly fails to wake for matins is forced to sleep on the cold chapel floor for a month. Another who questions a direct order is forced to eat his meals from the floor like a dog. Most eventually give up, preferring the shame of returning home as failures to this relentless regime. But you have nowhere to go back to. Your family can barely feed themselves, and your genuine belief in a higher purpose keeps you going. You persevere day after day, week after week, until your year of novitiate comes to an end. You are summoned to the presence of the preceptor, the knight who commands the preceptory. He is an old man by the standards of the time, perhaps 50, with a face marked by battle scars and a carefully trimmed gray beard. His eyes still burn with an inner fire that years of adversity have failed to extinguish. "Bertran of Villeneuve," he says, consulting a register, "you have completed your year of novitiate without major transgressions. The masters report that you are diligent, obedient, and strong. Are you ready to take your vows and become a sergeant of our order?" You hesitate for only a moment. Despite all the disappointments, you still believe in the Templars' mission. Besides, what alternative do you have? "I am ready, sir," you answer firmly. The ceremony is surprisingly brief and devoid of pomp. You kneel before the altar, dressed in your best clothes, a brown tunic only slightly less worn than the others. Before you stand the preceptor and other Templar Knights, their pristine white mantles contrasting sharply with the dark stone of the chapel. You recite your vows in Latin, a language you do not fully understand, promising poverty, perpetual chastity, and absolute obedience. Once the vows are pronounced, there is no turning back. You receive a black tunic, the garment of Templar sergeants, and a small wooden crucifix. There is no celebration. You are sent to your daily tasks immediately after the ceremony. Your new life as a sergeant is not substantially different from your life as a novice. The same routines, restrictions, and endless prayers continue to guide your days. The main difference is that you are now allowed to carry a lance and a dagger, but not a sword, which is a privilege reserved for knights. You also gain new responsibilities, supervising the work of contracted servants and training new novices, many of them arriving with the same naive dreams you once had. Act 4. Conspiracy and the Perilous Sea. Almost 2 years into your life as a sergeant, a messenger calls you out of a training session. "Bertran of Villeneuve, the preceptor requires your immediate presence. You are intrigued and slightly, apprehensive, but your conduct has been exemplary, and you've committed no recent infractions." In the preceptor's austere room, you find not only him, but also 2 other knights you don't recognize. Their mantles are dusty, and their boots muddy, indicating a recent long journey. "Sergeant Bertran," the preceptor says without preamble, "these knights are from our house in Marseille. They are gathering brothers for an important mission." Your heart quickens. A mission. This means leaving the preceptory. "A new campaign is being organized for the Holy Land," one of the visiting knights explains. "We need strong and reliable men to accompany the knights. Your name was recommended by the preceptor. This is the opportunity you have dreamed of since joining the Templars, to travel to the Holy Land, to participate in the defense of sacred places, maybe even to see Jerusalem. After years of rural monotony, the prospect of adventure is intoxicating. I am at the Order's disposal. Respond formally, struggling to maintain your composure. Good, the preceptor says. You will leave with them tomorrow at dawn. Prepare yourself accordingly. That night, as you pack your meager belongings, you can barely contain your excitement. Finally, your life as a Templar will truly begin. You don't realize you are about to discover the true hardships of Templar life, next to which the monotony of the preceptory will seem like a lost paradise. Dawn arrives with the promise of heat. The sky is tinged with orange as the Templars prepare to depart. You are one of 20 sergeants selected to accompany 10 knights. You each receive basic equipment: a lance, a triangular shield with the Templar cross, a dagger, a conical metal helmet, and a rudimentary chainmail shirt that weighs uncomfortably on your shoulders. The knights are far better equipped, with full armor, superior swords, and most importantly, specially trained war horses. This disparity reflects the internal hierarchy of the Order. Knights, all of noble birth, are the true warriors, while sergeants like you are infantry and personal squires. This distinction will soon become painfully clear. The first part of the journey is relatively peaceful. You move slowly, limited by the pace of the supply wagons and the men on foot. The knights, mounted on their imposing steeds, often ride ahead to scout the road or simply escape the tedious pace. For you, who have never ventured more than a few kilometers from your native village, each new landscape is a revelation. At night, the Templar routine is strictly maintained. Prayers still mark the hours, even under the stars, and silence is enforced. Discipline is relentless. A sergeant caught speaking after curfew is given 10 lashes as an example to the others. The days turn into weeks, and the novelty of the journey gives way to the discomfort of the road. Your feet, calloused from years of work, develop painful blisters that break open. The weight of the chainmail causes constant pain in your shoulders and back, and the heat grows more oppressive as you move south. You complain to Guillaume, who was also selected for the expedition. He shrugs. It's not much different from fieldwork. Pain is pain. Whether it's harvesting wheat or marching to war, you get used to it. You nod, acknowledging the practical wisdom. Your old life was also full of physical pain and discomfort. The difference is now you endure it for a higher purpose, or so you keep telling yourself. As you approach Marseille, you join other Templar contingents. What began as a small company transforms into a small army. Marseille is the largest city you have ever seen. Your eyes widen at the sight of high walls and towers that seem to touch the sky. The smell is a new, overwhelming experience. A mix of sea salt, fish, garbage, urine, exotic spices, and hundreds of human bodies crowded into narrow spaces. The Templars gather at a large complex near the port, a Templar house far grander than your preceptory. Here, hundreds of Templars from all over Europe prepare for the sea voyage. You and the other newcomers are housed in collective tents, even more cramped and uncomfortable than the dormitories you were used to. The heat is suffocating, and the smell of sweaty bodies makes the air nearly unbreathable. For weeks, you help load the ships with barrels of fresh water, sacks of flour, weapons, and armor. The relentless Mediterranean sun burns your skin, and the weight of the supplies, combined with the armor you are forced to wear, makes each day a brutal test. One afternoon, while loading a particularly heavy barrel, you slip on the boarding plank. The barrel escapes your grasp and rolls into the water. The knight supervising the work, a stocky man with an explosive temper named Guy de Montfort, rushes towards you. "You incompetent!" he roars. "Do you know how much a barrel of water costs?" You keep your eyes down as the rule requires. "I beg your pardon, sir. I slipped." The answer does not placate his fury. Guy takes off his leather glove and hits you across the face with it, a deliberate insult. You will pay for your incompetence. 50 lashes tonight in front of everyone, so you learn to be more careful with the Order's resources. You feel blood running from the cut on your cheek, but you do not dare to raise your hand to wipe it away. You know any movement could be interpreted as a challenge to his authority and result in even more severe punishment. "Yes, sir," you murmur, swallowing your humiliation. That night, as promised, You are tied to a post in the central courtyard. Your tunic is removed, exposing your bare back to hundreds of assembled brothers. Each blow of the whip tears at your flesh, but you refuse to cry out. Templars value stoicism, and showing weakness would only increase your shame. When it is over, your back is a bloody mess of torn flesh. No medical treatment is offered. The pain is considered part of the punishment and penance. Guillaume helps you back to the barracks, where you spend the night in agony, unable to lie on your back, fighting the fever that soon sets in. "Why does he hate me so much?" you whisper in your feverish delirium. "What did I do to deserve such fury?" Guillaume, who watches over you, responds quietly, "It's not personal. The knights see us as tools, not as brothers. When a tool fails, they punish or discard it." His words offer no comfort, but they confirm what you have begun to realize. The Brotherhood of the Templars is largely an illusion. The order is as stratified and hierarchical as the feudal society from which you all came. Sergeants bear the brunt of the physical labor and receive disproportionate punishments for small mistakes, while knights enjoy privileges and almost absolute power over their subordinates. AC 5. Betrayal on the High Seas. The wound on your back becomes infected. For several days you fight a fever, alternating between lucidity and delirium. In your moments of consciousness, you question whether you will survive to see the Holy Land. But you are young and strong, and your body eventually overcomes the infection. A week after the punishment, still weak and with your back raw under makeshift bandages, you are told the expedition will sail the next morning. There is no time for a full recovery. A wounded sergeant is still a usable sergeant in the eyes of the knights. The fleet of 10 merchant ships is robust but far from comfortable. As a sergeant, you are housed on the lower decks, in cramped spaces with inadequate ventilation. You've never seen the sea before. The prospect of spending weeks confined in such a small space, surrounded by hundreds of men, is intimidating. But as always, since you joined the Templars, you have no choice but to obey. As you board the ship, ironically, the same one where you dropped the barrel, now under the command of the unforgiving Guy de Montfort, you look at the European continent one last time. The realization hits you with unexpected force, a pang of longing for your village, your family, a life that now seems to belong to another person. "Move it!" an impatient knight behind you shouts. You snap back to reality and climb aboard, leaving the only world you have ever known behind. The ship moves slowly away from the coast, propelled by a morning breeze. You are immediately assigned to the oars, large wooden shafts used for supplementary propulsion. You have never rowed before, and your first attempts are clumsy, earning you frustrated shouts from the deckmaster. "Not like that, you idiot," the man yells. "You're out of rhythm. Follow the cadence or you'll taste the whip." You struggle to synchronize your movements with the other rowers, ignoring the searing pain in your still uncicatrized back. The work is brutal, hours of pulling and pushing the heavy wooden oar, your muscles protesting with every movement, your hands blistering and then tearing open, exposing raw flesh. As you move further from shore, the sea grows rougher. Large waves rock the ship, and many of the Templars, unaccustomed to sailing, begin to suffer from seasickness. The stench of vomit soon spreads through the lower decks, mixing with the existing smells of hundreds of sweaty bodies and human waste. You adapt relatively well, but many others are not so lucky. Guillaume, in particular, suffers terribly. One night, he lies beside you, his face perpetually green, unable to keep any food down. "I'm going to die here," he moans. You try to console him, but you're not sure. They have already lost 3 sergeants to disease in the first 10 days of the voyage. Their bodies are simply thrown into the sea after a brief ceremony. The water on board is strictly rationed, less than a liter per man per day. There are no exceptions, not even for the sick. One morning, you wake to find Guillaume motionless beside you, his skin gray and cold. He is the 12th man to die since leaving Marseille, and you are only halfway through the journey. His body is unceremoniously thrown into the sea. You watch in silence as the figure of your friend disappears forever into the blue waters of the Mediterranean. There is no time for mourning. You are immediately ordered back to your post on the oars. Life on board is a constant struggle against disease, hunger, thirst, and human nature. The food, mostly rock-hard biscuits, salty cheese, and dried meat, is quickly infested with worms. No one complains. Eating the worms is simply accepted as an additional source of protein. The water, even more precious than food, becomes progressively more disgusting. Stored in wooden barrels since departure, it develops a foul taste and a nauseating smell, yet it is still eagerly fought over when the daily ration is distributed. Sleep is another challenge. Cramped in a tiny space with no privacy and the constant movement of the ship, proper rest is almost impossible. The Knights, in theory, face the same difficulties. In practice, they have access to slightly better rations, less crowded spaces, and are exempt from strenuous physical labor like rowing. Guy de Montfort, in particular, is rarely seen on the lower decks. When he does appear, it is usually to inspect and criticize, never to help or encourage. His contempt for sergeants is palpable, and his cruelty is legendary. One afternoon in the oppressive heat, a sergeant named Maurice, a man of 50 who has spent his life in hard labor, momentarily drops his oar from exhaustion. "You!" Guy thunders, pointing at the old man. "You are deliberately slowing our progress." Maurice tries to apologize, but Guy has him seized and orders 20 lashes for negligence. To ensure his hands remain firm on the oar, Guy orders that they be plunged into salt water after each blow. The salt water in the open wounds is a particularly cruel form of torture. Maurice screams with the first lashes, then loses consciousness, but the punishment continues. He is left for dead, his body limp and bloody. "Let him be," Guy orders coldly. "Let him be an example to the others." You watch it all in silence, a toxic mix of fear, anger, and impotence growing inside you. But what can you do? You swore obedience to the order. Any protest would be insubordination and result in a similar or worse punishment. Act 6. The Spy in Cyprus. The weeks drag on, marked by sickness and the constant struggle against the elements. Then, one day, before dawn, you are woken by shouts of alarm. Staggering onto the deck, you find organized panic. Sailors run back and forth, and the knights emerge from their quarters, hastily donning their armor. "What's happening?" you ask a passing sailor. "Saracen pirates," he says laconically. "3 ships approaching from the east, prepare for battle." Your heart pounds. You've never been in actual combat before. The pirates' sleek galleys, built for speed and surprise attacks, are more agile than your heavy transport ships. The first pirate ship approaches, and a volley of arrows rains down on the deck. Most are blocked by your shields, but some hit their targets. You hold your shield high, your heart racing, but your mind is strangely clear. There is nowhere to run. Your only option is to fight, or more accurately, to serve as a human barrier between the pirates and the knights, who are positioned strategically behind you. The pirate ship comes closer, and grappling hooks are thrown. With war cries in Arabic, the attackers begin to climb the ropes. You and the other sergeants are ordered to cut the ropes. It's a dangerous job. Several pirates are already halfway up, shooting at anyone who gets close. A sergeant next to you falls, an arrow protruding from his eye. You focus on your task, frantically sawing at a thick rope. Finally, it snaps, and 2 pirates fall into the water below. There is no time to celebrate. More grappling hooks are thrown, and the other 2 pirate ships are approaching. The battle descends into chaos. You find yourself face to face with a dark-skinned man with a black beard, wielding a curved scimitar. You block his first horizontal strike with your shield. He strikes again, and the curved blade slides past your shield, cutting deep into your arm. The pain is intense, but fear and adrenaline keep you going. You counter with your lance, hitting the pirate in the abdomen. The man screams, pushes forward along your lance, and you thrust it deeper. His eyes widen in shock and pain, and his scimitar slips from his weakened fingers. He collapses on the deck, dragging your lance with him. You don't have time to process the fact that you have just killed a man for the first time. Another pirate is already in front of you, and without your lance you are at a disadvantage. You are saved by Guy de Montfort, who appears beside you. With a single powerful blow from his heavy Templar sword, he decapitates the pirate. "Keep fighting, Sergeant!" Guy shouts, turning to face another enemy. "Die as a Templar if necessary." The battle rages on, but the pirates, though numerous, are unprepared for the organized resistance. When the sun is high in the sky, they finally retreat. On the deck, you count your losses. 7 sergeants dead, 4 knights wounded, 1 mortally. Your arm wound is crudely stitched by a sergeant with some medical knowledge without anesthesia. You bite down on a piece of leather to keep from screaming. "You were lucky," the IE makeshift doctor says. "The blade didn't hit any major vein. Keep it clean if you can and pray it doesn't get infected." Clean feels like a joke in these conditions. The most surprising change is Guy de Montfort's attitude toward you. The next morning, he approaches you. "You fought well yesterday, Sergeant," he says, his tone not exactly warm, but different from his usual contempt. "You killed at least 2 of those Saracen dogs. It's good to know we can count on you when needed." You bow your head respectfully, not trusting your voice to respond. His approval is as unexpected as it is unsettling. "When we reach the Holy Land, there will be much more fighting," he continues. "Perhaps you have what it takes to become a true warrior of the cross." You are perplexed. Instead of feeling proud, you feel an odd emptiness. You killed 2 men whose names you never knew, who may have had families waiting for them. The deaths were necessary, but they weigh on your conscience in a way you didn't anticipate. This is not how you imagined your first battle. The days after the pirate attack are marked by a tense silence. The men are on high alert, constantly scanning the horizon. At night, you often wake up drenched in sweat from restless dreams, reliving the battle. You seek the company of the old Sergeant Maurice, who is recovering from Guy's brutal punishment. He tells you he was a fisherman before joining the Templars, after his wife and children died of a plague outbreak. "I thought I had nothing left to lose," he says with a bitter half-smile. "I was wrong, of course. There is always more to lose." On the 4th day after the attack, you spot land, the island of Cyprus. It is not your final destination, but a necessary stop for resupply. The island serves as a crucial logistical base for the Templars' operations in the Near East. The port of Limassol is a fascinating mix of cultures. Venetian and Genoese merchants jostle for space with Greek, Armenian, and Arab Christian traders. The architecture is a blend of Byzantine and Latin influences. The city is vibrant, but a veteran knight warns you, don't be fooled by the apparent cordiality. This place is as dangerous as it is beautiful. You are assigned to unloading and transport duties, work that is strenuous but welcome after weeks of confinement on the ship. During a break, you find yourself contemplating the city, its vibrant market colors, the constant movement of people, the sounds of foreign languages, all a dramatic contrast to the monochromatic austerity of your Templar life. "Thinking of running away?" a voice asks with irony. It is Etienne, a sergeant with whom you have developed a cautious camaraderie. "Don't be a fool," you reply. "Where would I go? I don't know anyone here, I don't speak the language, and the Templars have eyes everywhere." He shrugs. "They say there are Frankish communities on the Greek islands. A skilled man could find work as a mercenary or artisan and live as an oathbreaker for the rest of his life." You shake your head. "Break my vows before God. I would rather face the hardships to come than bear such a burden on my conscience." A messenger interrupts your conversation. "Sergeant Bertran de Troyes, you have been summoned by Sir Guy." A knot forms in your stomach. Being summoned individually by a knight is rarely a good sign for a sergeant. You are led to Guy's large tent, where he is studying a map. He hands you a small leather cylinder sealed with the Templar emblem. "I need you to deliver a message to the commander of the local fortress," he says. "It's a confidential communication." You are surprised. Important messages are usually entrusted to knights or squires. He explains that his squires are all busy and that you showed some competence during the pirate attack. You are to deliver it directly into the hands of Commander Bernard de Clairvaux and return before nightfall with the reply. Failure is not an option, he warns you. You carefully tuck the cylinder inside your tunic near your chest and set out immediately. As you walk, you can't help but wonder why Guy chose you. Was it a genuine opportunity, or was there some hidden purpose? Your thoughts are interrupted when you realize you are being followed. It's not obvious, just an occasional glimpse of movement in the vegetation. You choose to ignore it and set a trap at the next bend in the road. You hide behind a rocky outcrop, dagger in hand, and wait. A hooded figure appears. When the stranger passes the rocks, you act, grabbing them from behind and pressing the blade to their throat. A sudden move and it will be your last, you warn in a low voice. To your surprise, the body in your arms trembles not with fear, but with contained laughter. The figure relaxes and, in a surprisingly feminine voice, replies in French with a strong local accent. Impressive, Templar. Maybe not all of you are as clumsy as you seem. Shocked to discover your pursuer is a woman, you loosen your grip. It's a mistake. With feline agility, she twists away, and before you can react, you are the one with a small, curved dagger pressed against your throat. Now let's talk like civilized people, shall we? She says, lowering her hood to reveal an olive-skinned, dark-eyed Mediterranean face. Who are you? Why are you following me? You demand. My name doesn't matter, she replies. I'm interested in the contents of that cylinder you carry so close to your heart. You instinctively touch your chest where the document is hidden. How do you know about that? You ask. She smiles enigmatically. I have my methods. What matters is that I know you are taking a message to Commander Bernard, and I am willing to pay generously to know its contents. I am a Templar Knight, you reply, indignant. I do not betray my vows for money. The woman laughs again, a melodious sound. First, you are a sergeant, not a knight. The difference is significant, as you well know. Second, I am not asking you to betray anything. The message will reach its destination intact. I only want to know its contents beforehand. Impossible. The seal cannot be broken. There are ways to get around that without damaging the seal, she says, with the air of one who knows many secrets. Nothing that leaves a detectable trace. You stare at her with growing dismay. Who is this woman? A spy? For the Saracens? The Byzantines? Some rival faction within the Christian orders? What makes... You think I would agree to this? You finally ask. She sheathes her dagger. Because I will offer you something you want more than money, Sergeant Bertran de Troyes. The use of your full name startles you. What would that be? You ask cautiously. Information, she replies simply. About Guy de Montfort. Information that could protect you from certain unpleasant situations in the future. The mention of Guy's name piques your interest, though you try not to show it. What kind of information? You ask. First the message, then my part of the deal, she says, extending her hand. Make your decision, Templar, and I suggest you decide quickly. Time is running out, and you have a deadline to meet, don't you? You are faced with an unexpected dilemma. The disciplined soldier in you, the man who swore loyalty to the Order, categorically rejects the proposal. Another part of you, the pragmatic man who has witnessed Guy's arbitrary cruelty and fears becoming his next victim, seriously considers the offer. How do I know I can trust you? You ask, stalling for time. You can't, she answers honestly. Just as I don't know if I can trust you to remain silent about our meeting after our transaction. We are both taking risks. Her eyes fix on yours. But you have more to lose than I do if you refuse. It is true. You realize with a sinking feeling that if this woman is well informed enough to know your name and mission, she could cause you serious trouble regardless of your cooperation. I have your word that the seal will not be damaged and that no one but you will know the contents, you ask. A triumphant smile briefly flashes on her lips. You have my word. And believe me, Templar, my word is worth more than that of many of your order's brothers. Reluctantly, you take the cylinder from your tunic and hand it to her. She receives it with almost religious reverence, examining the seal before putting it in a leather pouch. "Come with me," she says, indicating a side path. "My temporary residence is nearby. I'll need some tools for our little job." You protest that you don't have time for detours, but she assures you that you will have enough time. You follow her down a narrow trail that snakes through olive and cypress trees to an old stone house. She goes inside, returning moments later with a small carved wooden box. She carefully opens it, revealing an impressive collection of small tools, vials, and instruments you don't recognize. With surprising dexterity, she manipulates the sealed cylinder. You watch, fascinated despite your apprehension, as she gently heats the seal with a small flame. She then inserts a hair-thin instrument under the wax and gradually separates the seal from the leather without breaking it. "An art learned in Constantinople," she comments, noticing your interest. "The Byzantines elevated espionage to a refined art long before we Westerners understood its usefulness." The open cylinder reveals a thin parchment. She unrolls it with nimble fingers and reads its contents quickly, her face betraying no reaction. When she is finished, she re-rolls it and skillfully reseals it with such finesse that it is impossible to tell it was ever opened. "Satisfied?" you ask, holding out your hand for the document. "Interesting," she murmurs, more to herself than to you. "Not exactly what I expected, but certainly valuable." She hands you the cylinder, and you put it back against your chest. "And your part of the deal?" you ask. "The information about Guy de Montfort?" She leans back slightly, studying you as if re-evaluating your worth. "Guy de Montfort is not who he seems," she says at last. "His loyalty to the Order is conditional." "What do you mean?" you ask. "He corresponds regularly with representatives of Saladin." The accusation is so shocking that you laugh involuntarily. "Impossible. Guy hates Saracens more than any man I've ever met. His cruelty against them in battle is legendary." "Appearances are often deceiving, especially when they are deliberately cultivated," she replies, unfazed. "Think, Templar. Who would suspect treason from a man who demonstrates such public hatred for the enemy? It's the perfect camouflage." You shake your head, still skeptical. "What proof do you have?" you ask. "None that I am willing to share at the moment, but watch him closely in the coming days, especially once you arrive in the Holy Land. Pay attention to nocturnal meetings, unusual messengers, questionable, military decisions." "Why are you telling me this? What is your interest in this matter?" She smiles again, that enigmatic smile that simultaneously reveals and conceals. "Let's just say I have interests that would benefit from exposing traitors on both sides of the conflict. Open war is preferable to dark conspiracies, at least for my associates." You feel manipulated, a pawn in a game whose rules you don't know. "How do I know you're not lying?" you ask. "You can't," she replies simply. "You will have to decide for yourself whom to trust." She gives you a final piece of advice. "When you return to camp, Guy will ask if you met anyone on the road. I strongly suggest you mention seeing a woman in the distance, but say there was no interaction. If you deny my existence entirely and he knows you're lying, he will be suspicious. A half-truth is always more convincing than a complete lie." You reluctantly assent, acknowledging the pragmatic wisdom in her counsel. Without another word, you resume your journey to the fortress, your thoughts more turbulent than ever before. The fortress is an imposing structure built of golden limestone. Its walls rise from the hill as if they were a natural part of the landscape. The black and white Templar banner, the famous Beauseant, flutters proudly from the central mast. You deliver the sealed cylinder to the commander, who accepts it and dismisses you. Act 7. The convenient treachery. The next morning, the fleet embarks again with characteristic military efficiency. All supplies are loaded, all men are on board, and anchors are raised before the sun is fully above the horizon. The 3 days on land provided a brief respite, which only makes the return to confinement, rationed food, and putrid water more difficult to bear. You immediately notice a subtle change in the dynamic on board. The knights, who previously kept their distance from the sergeants, now observe you more closely, particularly those under Guy's direct command. Instructions are delivered with an undertone of veiled suspicion. "They're looking for something or someone," Etienne mutters during a rare private moment. "I heard rumors that a spy was discovered in Limassol." Your heart jumps, but you maintain a neutral expression. "What kind of spy?" you ask. "No one knows for sure," he shrugs. "Some say Saracen, others talk of a Byzantine agent, some point to the Venetians. What matters is that the knights are on high alert, especially Guy and his inner circle. Why suspect us? We are all Christians sworn to the order." Etienne gives you a knowing look. "Not all traitors are dark-skinned infidels, my friend. Some of the worst betrayals come from those who share our faith, our language, even our blood." Your peripheral vision catches a movement. One of Guy's squires is watching you intensely while pretending to be busy. He casually walks away when he realizes he has been noticed, but the message is clear. Conversations are being monitored. "Be careful what you say," you warn Etienne quietly. "And to whom?" The following days are marked by palpable tension. Guy, in particular, is rarely seen except during formal inspections, always accompanied by 2 or 3 of his most loyal men. Then, on the 7th night after leaving Cyprus, you are on midnight guard when you observe furtive movement near the stern castle. A hooded figure moves silently, avoiding the areas lit by lamps. You instinctively retreat into the shadows to watch. The figure pauses by the gunwale, and after several minutes a faint glow appears on the dark waters below, a small, covered lantern in an approaching boat. With surprising agility, the hooded figure throws a thin rope, and a small package is quickly hauled up. The figure hides it in the folds of his mantle and gives a brief signal to the boat before moving away. You press yourself deeper into the shadows, holding your breath. The figure passes close by, heading for the stairs to the knight's quarters. As he passes a partially shielded lamp, the hood slips slightly, briefly revealing the face underneath. Guy de Montfort. The revelation momentarily paralyzes you. The words of the woman in Cyprus echo in your mind. He corresponds regularly with representatives of Saladin. Is this the proof of Guy's betrayal? A secret meeting at midnight, a furtive exchange with an unidentified boat. It's certainly suspicious, but it could also be something completely innocent. A.e. correspondence from another Templar ship, for example. The ethical dilemma is agonizing. If Guy is truly a traitor, your duty as a Templar requires you to report it. But to accuse a knight without concrete proof would be disastrous. At best, you would be punished for insubordination. At worst, you would be executed for slander. You decide you need to know more. When Guy disappears down the stairs, you crawl silently to the gunwale and look down. The small boat is barely visible in the darkness, but you can see it is heading not for another ship, but for the distant coastline, a dark line barely visible on the eastern horizon. You are sailing along the Syrian coast, territory controlled by the Saracens. In the following days, you watch Guy with renewed attention. But the knight behaves exactly as before, arrogant, demanding, and openly disdainful of Saracens and all things Islamic. During a meal, he gives a long speech about the inherent evil of the infidels. There can be no compromise. With the worshippers of the false prophet, he declares with seemingly sincere fervor, only by the sword will we purify the holy places they have defiled. How can a man express such sentiments publicly while secretly collaborating with the enemy? The dissonance is disturbing. Either Guy is an exceptionally skilled liar, or you have misinterpreted what you saw, or, most unsettling of all, the Cypriot spy planted false suspicions precisely to create this confusion. An opportunity for deeper investigation arrives unexpectedly 3 nights later. You are assigned to deliver maps and documents to Guy's quarters, a task normally reserved for squires. The knight is not present when you knock, and after several minutes with no answer, you carefully open the door to leave the documents on the table as instructed. The room is empty. Everything is meticulously arranged, a reflection of Templar military discipline. Nothing seems out of place or suspicious. You quickly deposit the documents and turn to leave. Then you notice something unusual. A small corner of a parchment peeking out from under the pillow on the narrow bed. Normally, you would have ignored it, but the memory of the nightly meeting compels you to investigate. With your heart pounding, you carefully extract the parchment. It is a brief note written in characters you initially don't recognize. Then you realize Arabic. Guy reads Arabic. This in itself isn't necessarily incriminating. Some veteran knights learn the basics of the enemy's language for practical purposes. But why would he keep an Arabic message under his pillow instead of with official documents? The door opens abruptly. You turn, the parchment still in your hand, and come face to face with Guy de Montfort. For a moment that feels like an eternity, you stare at each other in absolute silence. Guy's face shows no surprise, only a cold, calculating look that freezes the blood in your veins. "Interesting to find you here, Sergeant," Guy finally says, carefully closing the door behind him, especially holding that particular document. "My lord, You desperately search for a plausible explanation. "I came to deliver the maps as ordered. I found this parchment on the floor and I was just—" "Spare me your lies," Guy interrupts coldly. "The parchment was clearly under my pillow. The question now is, what to do with a sergeant who rummages through a knight's private belongings? You know you are in mortal danger. If Guy is truly a traitor, he will not let live someone who has discovered evidence of his treason." "I cannot read Arabic, my lord," you try, opting for partial honesty. "I don't understand the document's content." "How convenient," Guy says. He advances slowly like a predator circling a wounded prey. "But you certainly understand the implications of possessing such a document, and that, Sergeant de Troyes, is problem enough." You instinctively back away until your back hits the wall. "My lord, I swear by the Guy cross that I did not intend to." "Your intentions are irrelevant," Guy interrupts. "Only the consequences matter." He slowly unsheathes his dagger. "And the consequences for espionage are terminal." "I am not a spy," you protest. "I am a Templar, like you." Guy smiles coldly. "Yes, like me. An interesting observation." The tension is abruptly broken by loud banging. "Sir Guy! Urgent! Ship sighted!" Guy hesitates, his dagger still raised. For a moment, you think he will ignore the summons and proceed with the planned murder, but military duty prevails. An out-of-breath squire bursts in. "3 ships, my lord, approaching fast. The captain believes they are Saracens." "I will be on deck immediately," Guy commands, quickly sheathing his weapon. He turns back to you. "Our discussion is merely postponed, Sergeant, not concluded." When he leaves, you realize you are still holding the Arabic parchment. Instinctively, you hide it inside your tunic, evidence that could either save your life or condemn you. Actus 8. The inescapable truth. On deck, you find organized chaos as men run to battle stations. On the horizon, the distinctive triangular sails of Saracen galleys are clearly visible. "Pirates again?" you ask Maurice, who is arming himself nearby. The old sergeant shakes his head. "No, those are Egyptian naval galleys. They might just be patrolling their waters." But he leaves the thought unfinished, the potential outcome too obvious to state. Acre is visible in the distance, perhaps 3 hours of sailing in normal conditions, so close to safety, yet potentially unattainable. The captain orders all sails unfurled, trying to extract maximum speed from the ship. Guy and the other knights emerge on deck, already in partial armor. Guy gives you a piercing look, a silent promise that unfinished business will be resumed, assuming you survived the immediate danger. They will reach us before we reach Acre, the captain announces grimly. Then we fight, Guy replies, naturally taking command. All men capable of arms, sergeants to the front line, knights commanding strategic points. The Templars' efficiency manifests even in a crisis. Shields are raised along the gunwales, buckets of water are positioned to fight incendiary arrows, and weapons are distributed. You find yourself once again on the front line, armed with a lance and shield. The Arabic parchment weighs against your chest like a physical weight, a constant reminder of the danger from both outside and within. The Egyptian ships approach, their formation indicating a classic naval siege. They will surround your ship on 3 sides, limiting maneuverability while concentrating projectile weapons from multiple directions. Hold the line, Guy shouts, his voice cutting through the tension. Protect your flanks! Do not let them board! The first volley of arrows falls short, but a constant rain soon lashes the deck, making any unprotected movement dangerous. Shields high! Yes, Knight commands. You raise your shield, feeling the solid impact as an arrow buries itself deep. The distance continues to close. The Egyptian ships maneuver with impressive precision, positioning themselves for a coordinated attack. Hold fast, Guy shouts, moving confidently across the deck, seemingly immune to the danger. Your chance to counterattack will come. Then you notice something strange. One of the Egyptian ships, the one approaching from the port flank, suddenly alters its course. Instead of maintaining its siege position, it begins to slowly drift away, as if obeying some invisible signal. Not only that, the intensity of the arrows from that ship significantly decreases, becoming sporadic and notably less accurate. It's almost as if they are pretending to attack. No one else seems to notice the anomaly. You instinctively look at Guy, wondering if the knight has seen. What you see confirms your worst fears. Guy is watching the retreating ship intently, and for a fleeting moment, imperceptible to anyone not specifically looking, he makes a small gesture with his hand. It could be mistaken for adjusting his helmet, but you instinctively recognize it as a signal. There is no longer any doubt. The spy was right. Guy de Montfort is coordinating with the enemy, even during a direct battle against his supposed Templar brothers. The revelation is momentarily paralyzing. What should you do with this new certainty? Shouting accusations in the middle of battle would be suicide. No one would believe you, and Guy would have the perfect justification to kill you as a traitor or coward. But to remain silent could mean allowing the betrayal to endanger all the lives on board. The dilemma is interrupted by a piercing cry of, "Prepare to repel boarders!" The 2 remaining ships have closed the distance, throwing hooks and ropes to tie the vessels together. Dozens of Saracen warriors prepare to attack. The battle begins in a bloody fury, steel against steel, shouts of pain and triumph mixing with the constant clatter of feet on wood. You fight mechanically, your training taking over while your mind processes the betrayal you have witnessed. You block a scimitar blow, counterattack with your lance, feel the tip pierce flesh, and reposition yourself for another attack. The battle rages fiercely, casualties mounting on both sides, but the Templars, though outnumbered, have the advantage of superior armor and defensive position. They gradually but perceptibly gain ground, pushing the attackers back to their own ships. Then, in the midst of the combat, you see Guy briefly raise a small metallic object, a signaling mirror. A quick flash is directed at the distant Saracen ship. Seconds later, distant war drums sound from that vessel, a signal transmitted to the engaged ships. Suddenly, the Saracens begin a disciplined retreat, cutting their ropes and abandoning an attack they had been pursuing with full ferocity moments before. "They're fleeing!" someone shouts triumphantly. Cheers erupt among the Templars, who are convinced they have repelled the enemy through sheer strength. Only you, and presumably Guy, know the truth. The attack was orchestrated from the start, its outcome predetermined. But why? Why stage an attack only to withdraw when the advantage seemed to be shifting to the attackers? The objective did not seem to be to sink the ship or inflict maximum casualties. So, what was it? The possible answers are too disturbing to contemplate. Now, you turn your attention to the wounded, helping to carry a sergeant with a deep cut on his arm down to the lower deck. As you return to the upper deck, you almost collide with Guy, who seems to be waiting for you. "Sergeant DeTroy," he says quietly, inaudible to others. "Present yourself in my quarters at sunset. We have unfinished business that requires immediate resolution." Without waiting for a response, Guy walks away. You stand motionless, fully aware that the unfinished business will likely culminate in your death. Guy cannot risk leaving alive a witness to his betrayal, especially one who possesses physical evidence in the form of the Arabic parchment. The following hours pass in a surreal combination of frenetic activity and the absolute mental clarity that often precedes moments of existential crisis. You help care for the wounded, assist in cleaning the blood-soaked deck, and participate in prayers for the 6 Templars lost in the attack. All the while, your mind works methodically, evaluating options and calculating possibilities. Flee? Impossible at sea. Accuse Guy openly? Without influential allies or verifiable proof, since you cannot read Arabic, it would be your word against that of a respected knight. Assassinate Guy? Unthinkable both morally and practically. You would be instantly captured and executed. Confide the secret and the document to someone else? But to whom? Anyone powerful enough to act against Guy would likely be part of his circle, potentially an accomplice. As sunset approaches, you still have no viable solution. The port of Acre is now clearly visible, so close yet personally unreachable. With a growing acceptance of your likely fate, you prepare for the ordered meeting. Before you go to Guy's quarters, you seek out Maurice. The old sergeant is possibly the only man on board you fully trust. "I need you to hold something for me," you say quietly, discreetly passing him the carefully folded Arabic parchment. "If I don't return before we dock, give this to the commander of Acre. To no one else, do you understand? It's a matter of life or death." Maurice accepts it without question, nodding gravely. "What's going on, Bertran?" "The less you know, the safer you'll be," you reply. "Just promise you'll do as I ask if necessary." Maurice studies your face, noticing the tension around your eyes and the forced rigidity of your smile. "I promise," he finally says, "but I sincerely hope you deliver this yourself." "Me too," you reply, patting your old friend's shoulder before walking away. The walk to Guy de Montfort's quarters feels abnormally long. Each step on the deck board sounds like a small funeral march. You arrive at his door and hesitate. The sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges that contrast dramatically with the deep blue of the Mediterranean. Too beautiful for a day of death, you think to yourself. You knock 3 times as protocol requires. "Enter," Guy's voice says, surprisingly calm. You push the door open to find the knight sitting comfortably behind a small table, seemingly absorbed in a manuscript. His quarters are Spartan, as the Templar rule requires, yet they reflect his status. "Sergeant DeTroy," he says, gesturing for you to close the door. Punctual as always. You obey, standing rigidly near the entrance, hands clasped behind your back. Your heart pounds, but your face remains neutral. "Do you know why I summoned you?" Guy asks, placing the manuscript aside. "No, my lord," you lie, preferring to assess the situation. Guy smiles slightly. "I believe you do. In fact, I'm sure you do." He rises slowly and walks to a small window overlooking the sea. "I saw how you watched me during the attack. I saw the understanding in your eyes." You remain silent, refusing to incriminate yourself with hasty words. "And of course," Guy continues, turning to face you, "there's the matter of the document you stole from my quarters. The Arabic document." A shock runs through you. How did Guy know? "The Arab woman thought she could play both sides against each other," he says, as if reading your mind. "But she underestimated our reach." Guy returns to the table, opening a small, carved wooden box. Normally, a sergeant who invades a knight's quarters and steals private documents would face severe punishment, perhaps even death. You feel ice run down your spine. This is the end. But Guy continues, surprisingly. However, you have shown qualities I admire: intelligence, initiative, courage. Even now, you remain composed, facing probable death. From the box, he takes a small metallic object. What you witnessed today was not treason, Sergeant. It was necessity. You cannot suppress your disbelief. Necessity, my lord? Signaling the enemy during battle? The game we are playing is more complex than you imagine, Guy says, gesturing vaguely toward the port of Acre, now visible through the window. What do you see? There? A bastion of Christendom? A last refuge for our sacred mission? He gives a dry laugh. It's a labyrinth of intrigue, Bertran. Venetians against Genoese, Hospitallers against Templars, newly arrived European nobles against those who have been here for generations, all fighting for power, control, influence. And while we fight among ourselves, Baibars and his Mamluks watch from the shadows, ready to take everything when we have sufficiently weakened ourselves. That doesn't explain coordinating with the enemy, my lord. No? Guy raises an eyebrow. How many died today, Bertran? 6 of ours, my lord. Saracen casualties unknown. 6, Guy nods. In a staged attack with a predetermined outcome, do you know how many would have died in a real attack? Perhaps everyone, certainly many more. He leans closer, lowering his voice. Sometimes, to preserve the majority of the flock, some sheep must be sacrificed. Sometimes, to win the war, some battles must seem lost. Are you saying you are secretly working for the Order? You ask, confused. I work for survival. Guy sighs deeply. The Holy Land is doomed. Any man with eyes to see knows that. The question is not if we will fall, but when and how, and who will survive. Guy returns to the table and sits down heavily. Now I face a dilemma. What to do with you? I clearly cannot allow you to spread what you saw or what you suspect. You tense, bracing for the worst. There are 3 options, Guy says, holding up a finger. I can silence you permanently. He holds up a second finger. I can make you a prisoner until it no longer matters. Or, he holds up a third finger. I can offer you a place in our arrangement. Our, you ask. There are others who share my vision, he says. Knights, sergeants, even some outside the Order. We work to ensure that when the inevitable end comes, something of the Order will survive. Something of our knowledge, of our purpose. Guy leans forward. Joining us would mean abandoning certain illusions about the purity of our purpose and the inherent goodness of our cause. It would mean getting your hands dirty occasionally. But it would also mean being part of something greater, something that might survive the fall of Acre, the final loss of the Holy Land. You stand in silence, trying to process everything. Is this real? Or just a clever manipulation by a traitor trying to save himself? I don't expect an immediate answer, Guy says, noticing your confusion. But I need some assurance while you decide. The document you stole, where is it? I gave it to someone to hold, you reply cautiously. Maurice, I presume? Guy smiles at your surprised expression. As I said, we have eyes in many places. Unfortunately, this complicates things. Guy stands again. I must now ask you to accompany me to the deck guard. Am I your prisoner? For now, let's just say you're under protective observation. Guy walks to the door, and 2 Templar Knights immediately enter, indicating they had been waiting outside during the entire conversation. Escort Sergeant de Troyes to the Knight's quarters, Guy commands. He is to remain there until I give express orders. No contact with other sergeants, especially the old Maurice. As the guards lead you away, you ponder the surreal conversation. Guy's words sound partially true. But could they justify open treason? Or was it all an elaborate lie to buy time and retrieve the incriminating document? The Knight's quarters are uncomfortably silent. You are led to a small compartment used for solitary meditation. "You will remain here, Sergeant," one of the knights says as the other lights a small oil lamp. "I advise you to use this time for contemplation and prayer." The door closes with a resounding finality. There is no lock, as it would be sacrilege to lock a brother of the order in a space dedicated to prayer, but you know guards will remain outside. The small space contains only a wooden bench, a simple crucifix, and a worn book of psalms. You sit down heavily, contemplating your situation. Unless Maurice manages to deliver the document to the commander of Acre, there seems to be no way out. Hours pass in tense waiting. You try to pray, but the words seem hollow, echoing pointlessly off the narrow walls. Suddenly, distant shouts break the silence. Not battle cries, but alarms. Something is happening on deck. You press your ear to the door, trying to make out words in the growing commotion. You catch fragments. "Fire!" and "fast," amidst confused orders and hurried footsteps. A smell reaches you moments later, the unmistakable scent of smoke. The ship is on fire. You pound on the door. "Guards! What's happening? There's a fire! Open the door!" The silence from the other side is unsettling. The guards have abandoned their posts. Or a terrible thought occurs to you. What if the fire is no accident? What if it's a convenient way to eliminate both you and any evidence of treason? Smoke begins to seep through the cracks in the door. You cover your nose and mouth with part of your tunic, trying to think clearly. To die burned alive in a locked compartment is a fate no man deserves. The door is solid but old. The hinges are metal, but they are fixed to wood that has suffered years of exposure to the sea's dampness. If you apply enough force in the right spot, you back up against the opposite wall, take a deep breath, and charge the door, shoulder first, aiming for the lower hinge. The wood groans in protest. You back up and charge again, ignoring the sharp pain in your shoulder. On the third attempt, you feel something give. 2 more charges, and you create an opening wide enough to force your way through. Act 9. The endless search for truth. The outer corridor is thick with smoke, but no guards are visible, a disturbing confirmation of your suspicions. Disoriented, you begin to move in the direction you believe leads to the upper deck. The smoke thickens with every step, forcing you to crouch low to find breathable air near the floor. You turn a corner and almost collide with a figure stumbling in the smoke. It is Maurice, his face blackened and racked by a violent cough. "Bertran!" the old sergeant exclaims between coughs. "Thank God! I was looking for you! The ship! Sabotage!" "Calm down," you say, holding his arm and guiding him lower, where the air is slightly better. "What happened?" "Fire started in 3 places at the same time. It was no accident." Maurice grabs your arm with surprising strength. "The Knights, they are leaving the sergeants behind. Lifeboats. Only for them." The revelation doesn't shock you as much as it should. "The document," he says, tapping his chest. "I still have it. I couldn't reach the commander. They blocked the access." "We need to get out of here," you say, more to yourself than to Maurice. He nods weakly. "There's another way out. Cargo hatch near the kitchen." "Can you get me there?" you ask. "I can try." Together you move slowly through the smoke-filled corridor. The heat visibly increases, suggesting the fire is spreading quickly. A metallic clatter ahead makes you both freeze. Footsteps are approaching. Someone is descending a service ladder. The figure emerging from the ladder is unmistakable even in the smoky gloom. Guy de Montfort, carrying a small chest and moving with clear purpose. Guy suddenly stops, turning toward you as if he can feel your presence. "Who's there?" he demands. "I know there's someone there. Show yourselves and maybe you'll survive this night." A distant crash of splintering wood distracts Guy for a moment. You take the opportunity, emerging from the shadows with the speed of desperation. "Sergeant de Troyes," Guy says, genuinely surprised. "I see you are more resourceful than I imagined. You set fire to your own ship?" "Me? Certainly not," Guy says, sounding almost offended. "This is the work of our Egyptian associates. Apparently, they decided our agreement needed renegotiation. Renegotiation involving the murder of the entire crew? Politics, Guy shrugs. As I explained earlier, thankfully I keep contingency plans for such diplomatic twists. Important documents, relics, things that cannot be lost. He gestures to the small chest he is carrying. I was on my way to the last lifeboat. There is still room for a man of value. He studies you thoughtfully. And the other sergeants? The wounded? Inevitable. Collateral damage, Guy says, his tone almost bored. Come, Bertran, be practical. There's no time for heroic romanticism. You feel the smoke thickening around you again. The fire is closing in fast. What about the Arabic document, you ask, buying time? It's irrelevant now. Our friends have clearly broken the agreement. Guy holds out his hand. Your last chance, Sergeant. Come with me and live, or stay and die with the others. A muffled groan comes from the recess where Maurice is hiding, followed by a cough he couldn't suppress. Guy tenses immediately, his hand moving to his dagger. Who else is in there? He demands, his eyes narrowing. You seize the moment of distraction. In a fluid motion, you draw your own dagger and lunge. The blade slips between the plates of the light armor Guy is wearing under his cloak, finding the vulnerable spot below his right arm. Guy cries out more in surprise than in pain and stumbles back. His left hand grabs the dagger's hilt, but he doesn't try to remove it, knowing it would only speed up the blood loss. You. Guy looks at you with a new look of assessment in his eyes. I didn't expect that from such a devout sergeant. I learn fast, you reply, maintaining a cautious distance as he backs away. Apparently, Guy smiles bitterly, blood visibly staining his white cloak. But what do you gain? The ship is doomed. Everyone on board will die in minutes, maybe. You move sideways, positioning yourself between Guy and the ladder. But at least I will die knowing I did the right thing, you say. Guy laughs, a strange sound interspersed with a wet cough. The right thing? You still don't understand, Sergeant. There is no right in this world, only survivors and martyrs. The ship shudders violently, tilting slightly. The fire has compromised some critical structure. Guy stumbles with the sudden movement, leaning heavily against the wall. Be practical, Bertran. Take the chest. Get out. The boat is still there. Maurice emerges from the recess, coughing and swaying. Don't trust him, Bertran. Guy glares at the sergeant with irritation. Of course it would be you, you old fool. He turns back to you. Think carefully, Sergeant. Take the chest. Leave us here. Save yourself. Someone must survive to tell this story. The ship shudders again, more violently. Maurice nearly falls, grabbing your arm to steady himself. Come on, Bertran, he whispers. The cargo hatch, our only chance. You hesitate, looking between the ladder Guy indicated and the corridor Maurice suggests. The path to the lifeboat means possible immediate salvation, but trusting Guy seems utterly foolish. The cargo hatch is an unknown. Choose quickly, Guy says, sliding slowly down the wall, clearly weakening from blood loss. The fire won't wait for your moral decision. You make your choice. Let's go, Maurice. You turn your back on Guy and the path to the deck, guiding your friend towards the cargo hatch. Fool! Guy shouts after you. You will die for nothing. The Templars are finished. Acre will fall. All this will be forgotten. Ignoring his increasingly weak cries, you and Maurice move as fast as you can through the smoke-filled corridor. The heat is almost unbearable now, and every breath is agony. There! Maurice points to a rectangular opening at the end of the corridor. When you reach the hatch, you find it locked with a heavy metal bolt. You force it with all your remaining strength, your muscles protesting and your lungs burning. Finally, with a harsh scraping sound, the bolt moves and the hatch opens. Fresh air rushes into the corridor, offering momentary relief before smoke begins to escape through the opening. Below, the dark waters of the Mediterranean reflect the orange glow of the flames now devouring a large part of the upper deck. Can you swim? You ask, helping Maurice towards the opening. Not very well, the old man admits, especially not with these smoke-filled lungs. You frantically look around for something that floats. You spot empty barrels stacked nearby. Hold on to this, you say, rolling one towards Maurice. It'll keep you afloat. Maurice nods, but before moving towards the hatch, he takes the Arabic parchment from inside his tunic, offering it to you. Take this. Better chance of survival in your hands. You accept the document, carefully placing it inside your own tunic. We'll go together, my friend. No, Maurice says sadly. I'm too old. I'll only slow you. Down! I'm not leaving you. Someone must survive to tell this story. Maurice echoes Guy's words ironically, drawing a reluctant smile from you. Another violent shudder rocks the ship. There is no more time to argue. Go, Maurice, you urge, in the name of our friendship. You quickly hug the old sergeant. We'll meet again in this world or the next. I prefer the next, Maurice says with somber humor. This one has caused enough trouble. With your help, Maurice grabs the barrel and they push it through the hatch with Morris holding on tightly. The impact with the water is followed by moments of anxiety as you watch until his gray head emerges, still clutching the barrel. Not allowing yourself any more hesitation, you take a deep breath of the relatively clean air from the hatch and jump. The shock of the cold water is almost paralyzing after the extreme heat of the burning ship. You submerge completely before fighting your way back to the surface. Your arms and legs protest after so much tension and effort. When you emerge, you immediately look for Maurice. You spot the old man a few meters away, still clinging to the barrel but clearly struggling to stay conscious. You swim to him, helping him get a firmer grip. Together, you begin to move slowly away from the burning ship, whose deck is now completely engulfed in flames. You can see dark shapes moving in the water around you, other survivors who managed to escape. In the distance, near the coast of Acre, small points of light indicate moving boats. These are probably the knights who abandoned the ship earlier. Will they come to rescue you, or will they just watch as the sergeants drown or succumb to the cold? Look! Maurice points weakly to something floating in the water near you. You turn and see the small chest Guy was carrying, apparently thrown into the sea during some structural collapse of the ship. You swim to it, surprised to find that it floats relatively well. With considerable effort, you manage to maneuver the chest to Maurice, offering additional support to the exhausted sergeant. A gift from the noble Knight de Montfort, you comment with bitter irony. Maurice tries to laugh, but the sound turns into a painful cough. If we survive, what will we do? He asks. You look towards the distant lights of Acre, now clearly visible against the night sky. The city represents both refuge and danger, immediate physical safety, but also the labyrinth of intrigue and betrayal Guy described. First, we survive the night, you answer pragmatically. Then we find someone in Acre we can trust, someone outside of Guy's circle. What if such a person doesn't exist? Maurice asks. You have no immediate answer. The parchment against your chest now feels like it weighs a ton, evidence of treason that may find no willing ears to hear it. Then we go to Cyprus, you finally say. We'll find another branch of the order that is less compromised. Maurice nods wearily, saving his strength just to stay afloat. For long hours, you fight against exhaustion and the growing cold of the Mediterranean night. The ship continues to burn, eventually breaking in two with a deafening roar before disappearing beneath the waves. The darkness becomes almost complete, except for the distant lights of Acre and the occasional stars. Occasionally, you spot other survivors, but their numbers gradually dwindle as the night advances. Maurice visibly deteriorates, his breathing becoming more labored and shallow. Bertran, he murmurs at one point, if I don't make it, promise me you will take the document to the Grand Master in person, no one else. You will deliver it yourself. We're almost there, you insist, a lie you both know. The first ray of hope comes in the early hours of dawn, when distant shouts indicate approaching boats. Local fishermen, having noticed the burning ship, organized a rescue effort at the first signs of morning. "Here! Help us!" you shout with all your remaining strength, waving one arm while holding Maurice with the other. One of the boats changes course toward you. "Templars?" one of the fishermen asks in heavily accented Arabic. "Yes," you reply in French. "Please, my friend is very weak." Rough but gentle hands help Maurice first, carefully lifting him into the boat. Then they help you. Someone wraps you both in thick wool blankets and offers you a water skin, which you gratefully accept. It is only when you are safe in the boat that you realize you are still holding Guy's chest. Somehow, during the hours of fighting the sea, you unconsciously refuse to let it go. "Many Templars?" the old fisherman asks. "I don't know," you reply honestly. "Many escaped in boats earlier. Others were in the water like us." The fisherman nods gravely. "We've pulled out 7 so far. All sergeants like you. No knights." Of course, you think bitterly. The knights are already safe in Acre, probably planning how to use this Saracen attack for political advantage. The boat moves slowly towards the port of Acre, eventually joining other similar boats that participated in the rescue. When you finally dock, you can stand only with great effort. Maurice is unconscious, breathing shallowly but steadily. You reluctantly allow local monks from the Hospitaller Order to carry Maurice away on a makeshift stretcher, extracting a promise that you will be regularly informed of his condition. "And you, brother?" one of the monks asks you. "You also need care." "I'm fine," you lie, still holding the chest tightly. "I need to report what happened to the commander of Acre immediately." The monk looks skeptical, but does not insist. The commander is in the citadel, overseeing the response to the incident. You thank him and begin walking towards the imposing structure dominating the city's skyline. Each step is agony. The Arabic parchment is still secure against your chest, miraculously preserved inside your waxed cloak. The chest, you notice, in the light of dawn is finely crafted with metallic details. It is locked, but the lock seems to be damaged by the salt water. As you walk through the narrow streets of Acre, gradually filling with morning activity, you notice curious glances directed at you. An exhausted, soaked Templar carrying an ornate chest. Some seem to recognize the significance of your appearance, whispering among themselves about the Templar ship they already know was attacked during the night. As you approach the citadel, you notice an increased presence of Templar Knights in the streets. They seem to be watching you with particular interest, some exchanging meaningful looks as you pass. Your instinct for self-preservation kicks in again. Something is not right. You abruptly deviate from your direct path to the citadel, choosing less crowded side streets. You need time to think, to assess the situation. Has Guy somehow survived, or have his allies already established the official narrative about the attack? You find a small, partially protected niche between 2 buildings and allow yourself a momentary rest, leaning your back against the stone wall. Exhaustion threatens to completely overwhelm you. It is then that you notice the damaged lock on the chest has partially yielded, leaving a small, visible opening. The temptation is irresistible. After checking for onlookers, you carefully force the opening, revealing the contents of the chest. Not documents or religious relics, as Guy had suggested, but dozens of jewels. Emeralds, rubies, pearls, and gold worked into delicate forms, a fortune in easily transportable and universally valuable objects. The revelation is staggering. It is not just treason, but outright corruption. Guy was a thief, a conspirator. He didn't care about the Order or Acre or the Holy Land. He was only concerned with saving his own life and his fortune. Act X. Judgment and Ascension. You emerge from the shadows a changed man, no longer the naive peasant, who joined the Templars with heroic dreams. You are a survivor forged in the brutal fire of reality. The moral clarity you once sought has been replaced by a grim understanding of the world. You no longer believe in a world of pure good and evil, only in the choices men make in the face of impossible circumstances. The journey to Acre's citadel is different this time. You walk with the confidence of a man who knows the truth, a man who holds not only the evidence of a great betrayal, but also the key to a vast conspiracy. You are no longer just a messenger, you are a witness. You are the accuser. You find Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master's envoy, and present him with your evidence, the Arabic parchment, the chest full of jewels, and your story of Guy de Montfort's treachery. De Molay is an honorable man, and he sees the truth in your eyes and in the physical evidence you present. He convenes an extraordinary council where you lay bare the extent of the conspiracy. The corruption is not limited to Guy de Montfort. The commander of Acre himself is at the center of it, diverting resources and selling information to the enemy. When the commander Thibault sees you, he is stunned. "You should be dead," he exclaims in surprise, confirming his knowledge of the attack on your ship and his complicity. With the conspiracy dismantled, de Molay promotes you from sergeant to knight, an unexpected honor. It is a promotion not by noble birth but by courage and moral conviction. The true battles are not fought with swords alone, but with moral courage. True nobility comes from the choices you make against evil, not from the circumstances of your birth. You understand now that even if Acre is destined to fall, it will not be due to your betrayal, but despite your best efforts to defend it. You are a fundamentally different person, physically and mentally tougher, with a new perspective on life and death. You did not complain. You did not boast. You survived. Not by blood, not by law, but by survival.